Lawyers of Reddit, what's the worst way you've seen a person screw over someone else in court, whether it be criminal, civil, or divorce proceedings? Represented a guy that stole 3 trucks from his work. Only 2 were recovered before trial. He showed up to a motion hearing in the 3rd one. I took my ex to court because she had used my social security number to sign up for cable. I found out about it when she stopped paying for the service. She screwed herself over by just being herself. We show up to court. I turn in the contract from the cable company showing my social security number and her own name signed on the contract. She didn't even try to forge my signature. She signed her own name in and tried to deny that she had any part of it. The judge tore her apart, and it was nice. Not someone else, but my client screwed themselves. I'm doing landlord-tenant stuff and my client was facing eviction over non-payment, but the client was withholding rent payments because of habitability issues in the apartment. No heat, high lead levels, vermin. This is gonna be an easy win for me. Told my client continually to make sure they don't spend the money, keep it but don't spend it. Because if you show the judge you still have the money, it looks real good for you in terms of making the judge believe that you're withholding for good reasons. We get up in front of the judge. Landlord doesn't have an attorney, so I'm dancing inside. There's no way I can lose. I make my arguments and the landlord makes his. Judge asks my client if they still have the money. Client goes, nah, I blew that shit at the casino last week. My wife is the lawyer. Info: when children reach the age of majority, if they do not continue studying and start working, it is not necessary to pay alimony. Info: my wife's client found a new lover, which unleashed the wrath of the ex-wife, who started asking for more alimony for her children. Well, to win the case, it was necessary to prove that the children were working, but they could not get any proof of it. There was not much chance of winning, but they still went to court hoping that with the interrogations they could find information that would put them in evidence. On the day of the trial, the children did not go, only the mother and her lawyer were present. Judge: madam, tell me why your children could not come. Mom: they could not get permission at work. Judge. Lawyer: mom. Another few seconds of silence. Judge: well, that was fast. Not a lawyer, but a friend kept meticulous records of how much time his estranged wife spent with their daughter. He used pink highlighter for mom and blue highlighter for himself. Mom sailed into arbitration demanding full custody and handsome child support in the house. Dad pulled out 3 years' worth of year-long calendars. Mom had spent less than a full month with the child in 3 years. Mom was not happy with the outcome. Am lawyer. Saw someone screw himself. I work as a public servant in a criminal law judge's office, and since I have a law degree I don't normally do administrative work, though I get to be with the judge in some of the hearings. Last month we had a huge drug trafficking case. I'm talking about 20 or more people involved, months of investigation, undercover agents, videos, audio, the whole ordeal. Hearing lasted 3 days. Anyway, when it was time for one of the defendants to be on the stand, so the prosecutor could read the charges he was accusing him of, he was pleading not guilty, as he very loudly stated from the majority of the hearing, up until my boss the judge told him to shut up, or he would be admonished, to which he replied, "What are you gonna do, arrest me?" Which, to be honest, was actually a bit funny. The prosecutor, as part of the facts of his case, told him that he was being accused of selling, trafficking, and carrying X amount of X drugs, with the base of his operation being his house, where he lived with his partner. Mind you, said partner wasn't even in the hearing. She wasn't arrested or anything, as there was nothing tying her to the case. He said, "Wait up, I was the one selling the drugs. She didn't do anything." His lawyer, a state-assigned public lawyer, facepalmed so hard it's actually recorded in the audio of the hearing. He still pleaded not guilty. A witness for the plaintiff in a civil suit, who was a co-worker of the plaintiff, testified very strongly against the company and in favor of the plaintiff. I questioned her about bias toward the plaintiff, if they knew each other well, were friends, etc. She said, "No, just friendly co-workers, work friends, at best." I pinned her to it. When I got a chance to cross-examine the plaintiff, she had no choice but to burn her witness's credibility, because not only were they very close friends, but they had become sisters-in-law just a few years before. No, they did not have the same last name or anything, but I had done my homework. I still don't get why people want to fight small bias by destroying their credibility, but it happens more than you'd think. Too many criminal client situations to count of them screwing themselves over. One of the very few family law cases I handled as a young atty sticks out to me though. Young woman and young man have child. Young woman seeks divorce from young man because he enjoys the thug life. He had recently been arrested and charged for possession /int to distribute meth, felony, and in possession of a firearm, and lawful carry. Young man doesn't like her leaving him. He hires a local big name top divorce atty, granted, very rural area. Gets temp divorce order entered saying she cannot have overnight guests of the opposite sex. Common and rural conservative areas think it's mostly a thing of the past in more urban places. Young woman starts seeing someone new. Young man is very upset about this. Has his fancy lawyer ask for a hearing accusing her of violating court order and seeking full custody on top of atty fees. Young woman, on advice from a mutual friend, hires me for this hearing. I sit down with opposing counsel, and she basically tries to strong-arm me her experience and lays out egregious terms. Mother must not only give up primary custody, but must have visitation with a supervisor and pay child support and atty fees. She knows I'm a new baby atty in town, fairly certain I had been licensed for less than a year. I balk and she says she'll see us in court. I go into hearing with a copy of his probation arrangement on his pos /intent to sell and unlawful carry. He hasn't told his atty about this, and she is unaware. She calls him up, establishes how my client had her new BF over on X, Y, Z nights. Judge is very conservative, not pleased. Then, opposing counsel passes the witness. I ask him if he has a job. No. What do you do for money? Things here and there. Oh, Ms. Opposing counsel is awfully expensive. Do you sell meth? What? Have you ever sold drugs to make ends meet? I know. Introduce a copy of his guilty plea and straight probation sentencing. Judge is now staring daggers at him. I lean over to my client sitting next to me and whisper, if you took a drug test today, be honest, would you be completely clean? Yes. I ask the young man, when was the last time you did meth atty objects, but judge overrules. I know this judge will drug test people on the spot as he is also the misdemeanor drug court judge. It's been years, I'm clean. So, if you were tested, you'd be clean, yes. Opposing counsel asks the same of my client, we agree. Judge has them both tested. He tests positive for meth. My client is clean. Judge denies his motion and asks me to send in new temp orders where young man is required to maintain employment and start paying child support and places him on supervised visits. Icing on the cake, opposing counsel actually calls me and leaves me a voicemail congratulating me on, and I quote, handing her ass to her for the first time in a long time. Someone I knew had a pro dia case where she had to defend a person who had been charged with a criminal offense, don't know what, confidential and whatnot. Even though the police and DA could pretty much pinpoint the crime to her client, there was no evidence to tie him to the crime, circumstantial at best. She had instructed him to shut up and let her do the talking during the trial, as from experience the client sometimes does not know how to answer a question properly. She pleads and can show that the court has nothing on her client. She feels that for once, a pro dia case is going her way. After her plea, the judge thanks her for her plea and turns to her client. He asks if the client had something to add to the plea. Client looks at her, back at the judge, tears well up in his eyes, and he blurts out, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. She threw her notes and everything else she had in her hands at the client, now convict, apparently. She basically got screwed by her own client, who screwed himself even worse. Well, not my story, but a prior boss's story. They had a drunk driver kills a car worth of people case at the time, when they were a general practitioner. My boss was representing the family that got hit, one where the 2 kids and the wife had died, but the father had not, and wanted the college guy's drunk driving skin to be mounted on a wall. This was back before Facebook was commonly used in court proceedings, and before tons of people realized that shit is too great for any attorney worth their weight in salt to pass up. So, the kid, drunk driving college kid, had managed to get the judge's sympathy during the first part of the hearing by saying he was sorry, haunted, never going to drink again, this was going to ruin his life, etc. The judge seemed to really be eating it up. Then comes my boss and immediately burns this kid's remorse to the ground by showing numerous Facebook statuses and photos of them binge drinking, partying, and even joking about driving drunk from the date of the accident up until a night ago. The kid looked like he was being forced to swallow hot coals and the judge was absolutely livid. Needless to say, the kid had to do way more than just apologize and be remorseful after that. Here's kind of an anti-story for balance. My marriage with my ex-wife fell apart a while back, and she probably cheated on me, and I probably drank too much to be a good husband and we argued and separated. It could have gotten messy at this point if either of us decided to be vindictive, but at this point we knew it was over, and our main priority was the kids. Custody was never an issue, because the older kids could choose where they wanted to stay at any given time. They chose to stay with me most of the time, and although we arranged a timetable for the younger kids they could come and go as they pleased, if they were staying with friends in the neighborhood etc. Child support was also not an issue as I'm not a dick, and I'm happy to pay my share towards giving them a decent life. I don't count what it costs when they're with me, and I pay half towards school costs, clothes, outings etc. On the morning of the divorce proceedings we met for coffee before going before the judge. The judge proceeded to ask us what contracts we had signed for the mortgage, custody, child support etc. And we just said none. We had it worked out. The judge was incredulous and asked several times, "Are you sure? This is highly irregular." We still have occasional arguments on the details that we have to work out as adults, but yeah, tomorrow I might get in from work to find one of the younger kids in front of the TV in an unscheduled visit, or I might get a text for half the cost of a school outing next week, and that's all fine by me. Not my case, but my dad's. He was the equivalent of a public defender decades ago. There was this guy that would get caught for being drunk in public lewdness, etc. every weekend. He seemed to draw the same judges and was pretty well known to everyone in the courthouse as an absolute lost cause. One of the regular judges had him appear in his court again. The judge is ready to give him a prison sentence because he was driving a car this time, but the guy starts crying that he finally got a job out of town and was trying to turn his life around. Judge tells him as long as he never makes a mistake in my town again, he would just drop the charges. Well, sure as hell the guy shows up the following Monday. Same judge. Driving drunk again. My dad now has his case. The judge tells him he gave him his final chance, to which the guy sobs and replies, "I was leaving town, Your Honor. But my friends decided to throw me a going away party." The judge was not amused. My dad had to do everything he could to not laugh. Sitting waiting for my client and the judge is giving a mass colloquy for an alternative program on a DUI. Basically probation. Question: has anyone consumed alcohol or taken drugs in the last 24 hours? Obvious answer aside, one dude proudly raises his hand. "I smoked some dope last night." He did not get probation. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.